you go. Deck 78.
Welcome back to Deck 78, an Inglorious Treksperts podcast. And we're all pulling up a chair here in 10 Forward, where we are going to be talking, well, we won't, Ashley will, about Deadpool and Wolverine.
We're going to be listening, yes.
We're going to be listening raptly, with rapt attention.
Wrapped around your little finger.
So this was a conversation you had about the legendary characters of Deadpool and Wolverine, which are now united like peanut butter and chocolate on screen.
They're
over $1 billion.
Deadverine and Woodpool.
Wolfpool, which sounds very German. Wolfpool.
I am Wolfpool.
I have to tell you, and this is not a spoiler, I don't think at this point. I was disappointed. There were a lot of rumors that Dazzler was going to be in it, and Dazzler was not in the new movie, and I was disappointed. I was hoping Dazzler would be in it.
Well, here's a fun fact for you. At one point in the development of X-Men First Class, in a very, very early draft, as we were kind of figuring out what we had the budget for and what we could do, Dazzler was, in fact, going to be in X-Men First Class. And we had the coolest moment of all time where Banshee was going to make a very loud noise and Dazzler was going to turn it into a very large laser beam. But sadly, that wasn't in the budget.
Oh, that's too bad. But you know what I love about this podcast? I'm always learning something new.
Well, it's great to learn.
Yeah, it is. And you're going to learn a lot when you listen to this great interview that Ashley conducts. This was conducted right before the movie opened. And we'll be back afterwards to discuss our own thoughts about Deadpool and Wolverine. Stick around.
Your teen requested a ride, but this time not from you. It's through their Uber teen account. You drive your teenager around, a lot, to their friend Jacob's house, their other friend Jake's house, to James's, to Jaden's, to Jalen's, to...
Mom? This is Jake's house, not Jacob's.
Now with an Uber teen account, your teen can request a ride under your supervision. They'll ride with a highly rated driver, and with live trip tracking, you'll follow along the whole ride to their friends' houses that all sound the same. Add your teen to your Uber account today. See app for details.
Bye, Mom.
This short break from civilization is brought to you by the Ford Bronco. Get back out there. The Ford Bronco. Built wild. Learn more at Ford.com/Bronco.
This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate is the world's biggest coffee lover because we love all the ways you enjoy. Wait. Coffee Mate can't love coffee more than me. I'm a foodie. I went to Kyoto just for a nitro matcha latte. What? Oh, I have to finish the ad. Coffee Mate, for the love of coffee.
What up, y'all? It's Joe Budden, here to talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to win real money while watching football. You can get up to 100 times your money.
Prize Picks will give you $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code SPOTIFY. That's code SPOTIFY on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play a $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Right now, it's just me. I'm Ashley Miller. I'm your moderator. I'm the writer of Thor, X-Men First Class, cool stuff like that. And they asked me to come and talk to these invisible chuckleheads about Deadpool and Deathstroke, Wade versus Slade. One maniac enters, one maniac leaves, and then the other guy is Deathstroke. There we go. George, how are you, sir?
Sorry, I was saying.
No worries, not at all. Okay, so now it's me and George Jeanty, who you may recognize, Eisner nominee.
Award winning.
Oh my, he won, guys. Yeah, I don't know anything. This is why they shouldn't put me in charge. Eisner winner for Buffy season 8.
For Buffy, yeah.
Brilliant artist. And he has, in fact, drawn Deadpool.
I did. I was on Deadpool for about a year. Yeah.
And Deadpool never complained once about it, which is the best.
Not to me, anyway.
No.
But he got killed a lot, so.
Well, it's not really Deadpool unless he's being killed. I figured we won't wait for the other panelists to show up. We'll jump right into it with, I think, the most important question. Now, you're a little bit biased, but, in a brawl.
Actually, I'm part.
Are you? You're not as biased as I think.
I was going to say a joke, but never mind.
Brawl for it all. Who wins? Who lives? Who dies? Deathstroke or Deadpool? Go.
Deathstroke. Remind me who Deathstroke is again?
Okay.
His name is
Yeah, Deathstroke is in.
Oh, from DC. Oh, I'm thinking DC. Marvel. I'm thinking Marvel. I didn't know we were cross-pollinating.
We're cross-pollinating.
Deathstroke because Deathstroke can't come back, can he?
No, he can't.
I mean, at the end of the day, Wade is just so mischievous. Even if he does get dismembered or whatever, I think he'd end up
finds
winning.
a way.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, what do you know? Here comes the rest of the panel. Outstanding. Oh, no, it's okay. That's
it.
What he said.
I wanted it all for myself.
He said he saw you guys on the stairs and he pushed you down. It was really weird. I didn't get it. Okay, how you doing?
Can I get you to slide over to the right a little bit? So
100%. So just so you know, when we're going into the mics, try to project or just speak right into it because this is top of the line recording gear.
I can see that.
Yeah. So introductions. This is Mr. Kyle Higgins. He's the creator of Radiant Black. You did a year on Deathstroke back in the mid-teens, right?
In your mid-teens?
Yeah, he was a teenager at that time. He was 13 years old. So.
Yeah, I did the first 8 issues of Deathstroke for the New 52 back in 2011.
Awesome. And Mr. Christopher J. Priest, not to be confused with, so that way, like, those guys share that. We're recording for a podcast. Yeah. So Mr. Christopher J. Priest, not to be confused with Christopher Priest, the British author.
Thank God.
I know you as Jim Owsley.
Yes.
Because I was but a lad in the 70s and the 80s, and you were an editor, an assistant editor, like you worked for Larry Hama, like on Conan and all kinds of stuff.
When it was rocking the afro and the big glasses.
There you go. There you go.
I wasn't, but it was just your resume kind of speaks for itself. And I think you were the only person here who has experience with both Wade and Slade.
Oh yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I drew him in a 52, a new 52 issue, but that was it.
Okay, so just that one time, right? The one time is always memorable. So the question before us is, it's a cage match. Wade versus Slade. Who walks out alive? And why?
Is Wade allowed to talk to the writer?
Since that's one of his superpowers, I think, yes.
It depends on how much money he's slipping me for this, to be writing this match. But my price is not very high, so probably Wade.
Okay.
Yeah, I would probably agree that Deadpool, his regenerative abilities surpass that of Deathstroke, and I'm currently writing Deathlock, so I'm getting a little confused here. I keep writing Deathstroke in the Deathlock script, and the editor gets confused. And what are you doing? And they go, I don't know, I'm very confused. I'm a very old man. I can't remember. But that's what I would assume. I would tend to agree with Kyle.
Yeah, I thought so too. Wade. Wade would come out.
So the consensus seems to be that it's Wade Wilson. But, Kyle, you brought up a really interesting point. Like, what happens if Wade can talk to the writer? Now, you assume that bribing the writer would be enough. But what happens if Wade really annoys the writer?
Well, then the writer probably gets fired because Wade, Deadpool, makes Marvel a lot of money.
Oh, right. Okay, good point. So money talks and bull crap. Yes.
Is everyone aware of what we're talking about? Deadpool.
God, I hope you know who these guys are. I just wanted a place to sit. Okay.
Deadpool pretty much, not always, but most interpretations, knows he's in a comic book. Yeah, okay.
All right, I want to just jump in parenthetically to say that when I was writing Deathstroke, I created a character that's a knockoff of Deadpool, and his name was Death Mask. So Death Mask showed up in a few issues of my Deathstroke Arkham volume, and he's the costume is kind of a modified costume of Deadpool, and he's talking exactly like my Deadpool. He's doing all the Deadpool shtick, and he's getting on Deathstroke's nerves and blah, 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 blah. And it's at some point in the middle of this fight that they're having that he stops and he turns to camera and he says, "Wouldn't it be ironic if they sued us?"
Yeah.
As in if Marvel sued DC over us, ripping off Deadpool when they ripped off Deathstroke to create Deadpool in the first place. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, welcome to the club.
Yeah, hey, just take a look at them. Go back and read some of the first appearances of Deadpool and meditate. See and read, and you will fully understand what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, guys. What is fun? First, about writing or drawing, nothing is fun. Life is pain.
Yes.
What's fun about writing or drawing Deadpool or Deathstroke? Pick your favorite, whatever you have the most experience with.
You go. Yeah. I mean, I came on when Jimmy Palmiotti was still writing Deadpool, and I never thought myself to really be that type of an artist, because I wasn't really good at guns, and I worship Michael Golden. And I thought, well, if somebody's going to draw a book like this is a Michael Golden, or you have to aspire to be a Michael Golden in order to draw this particular book. And I just thought, this is it. I'm not going to stick around. And plus, when I got there, the issue that was happening was Deadpool against the Punisher. So now you've got two people who've got guns, and basically that's their trade. And the comedy element to it all did offset the technical element. And I thought, wow, I didn't know that I would like it this much. Yeah, the comedy is very juvenile, as Wade Wilson can do, but it felt refreshing against the backdrop of the quote unquote real killing that went on. So I found myself enjoying it in spite of the things that I thought that were my shortcomings, which was all that technical stuff.
Well, let me ask you this as a little bit of a follow-up, because you were talking about, the challenge of drawing something like that. Is it different to craft a panel in any way, shape, or form, to do a layout, knowing that you have to be funny? Is that a different sort of a challenge?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I never approached it thinking I was funny. I approached it thinking he thought he was funny. Yeah. And I drew the story as the story would progress, not in a humorous vein. So, that's usually the case of comedy. Everybody else is serious except the guy who's supposed to be funny. And in that, I drew everything else relatively seriously. And then he would just do whatever it was that Deadpool would do.
So you played it straight.
I played it straight, but I understood that he could break the fourth wall. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I struggled with Deadpool for quite a while, and I wasn't quite getting it, and it just driving me nuts. I was writing some really bad Deadpool stories, and then one day I literally woke up in the morning, and it just popped into my head, and I went, "Oh, now I get it." And I called up my editor, Mike Martz, and I said, "Mike," he goes, "Yeah." I said, "Deadpool." He goes, "Yeah." I goes, "He's an idiot," and he goes, "Yeah." And I go, "Oh, now I get it." Because you're trained as a writer to never put your characters in a situation where they can be mocked. You don't want to put Batman in some, ridiculous situation and so forth. So you're really disciplined to do that. But when you're writing Deadpool, you have to kind of throw all that out, and approach it from a different perspective. But beyond that, I think that comedy is in comics is very difficult. It's almost as difficult as horror for different reasons. But with comedy, it's like, you're writing or you're drawing and you hope to God this is funny, but you won't know until like years later when you show up at a show like this and go, and somebody comes to your table and go, by the way, that really wasn't funny. I didn't get it.
And we're looking at you, whoever you are.
Yeah.
I mean, before you go on, I just want to have another little follow-up for you, which is, you were saying you had the revelation that Deadpool is an idiot.
Yeah.
Which, now I think should be self-evident to everyone who...
That I didn't have to protect him.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Because that's the usual rule that they give us, right? Yes. You have to protect your hero. So was that the key to the comedy, was saying, instead of protecting him, I'm going to make him look like an a-hole?
Well, once I stopped protecting him, I didn't have to make him look like anything. Right. I could just go, I don't have to be that concerned about, the dignity, the character's dignity. And so he encounters Loki, and Loki gives him Thor's hammer, and he turns him into Deadpool becomes like a version of Thor, and he's having this great time being Thor, and then he double crosses Loki, and Loki puts a curse on him, and the curse that he puts on Deadpool is he gives him Tom Cruise's face. So instead of him being hideously disfigured, he looks like Tom Cruise. And for the next 6 or 7 issues, wherever he went as Wade Wilson, he'd be talking to somebody at a cafeteria or whatever, and they'd be talking to him, and they'd stop and go, wait a minute. Aren't you Tom Cruise? And we just did that joke over and over again. They did a likeness of Tom Cruise. They had to misspell it. So it was THOMCRUZ. Tom Cruise, now, of course, we could never get away with that today because Marvel is no fun now because it's, the corporate, banshees have descended. But back then they were owned by a pencil company or something. And the president of the company, he didn't know what we were doing down there. He didn't know what Shooter was up. Who's Shooter? We don't know.
Busy with lipstick and rubbing.
Yeah. Cadence, whatever that was, but now Disney, we did this U.S. agent thing, and I wrote U.S. agent the way I remembered him when Mark Grunwald created him, and U.S. agent was kind of an idiot, and he was kind of bigoted and so forth. And I wrote him as this a-hole, and Tom Brevoort approved it, and we got the script done. You drew the thing. We're getting ready to send the book out, and now you have to send stuff to Standards and Practices and to the legal department. And this book came back from Standards and Practices and legal, and it looked like it had the measles. And every line is he can't say that. Oh, he can't do that. Chinaman? He can't call this guy a China. What's wrong with you? And I'm going, wait a minute. So you can't have any fun at Marvel anymore. And I haven't read Deadpool in a while. Maybe Deadpool is the exception. Maybe they excuse Deadpool because he's Deadpool, or maybe not. I don't know if Deadpool was even any fun anymore. The films help a lot because the films, they just are unhinged. He's still fun. Okay, then they're giving him a pass because they just beat the hell out of me.
Enemies of fun.
Marvel, enemies of fun.
Kyle, go ahead. Delight us.
It's funny. I've never written Deadpool, and I'm just sitting here thinking about when I was doing Deathstroke, and so for many years, I very much did not like meta-ness. And now with the books that I do at Image, The Massiverse, Radiant Black has a little bit of a self-awareness quality to it that I think I would actually quite enjoy writing Deadpool at this point. But one of the things that helps with, I do think the comedy helps Deadpool immensely. One of the big challenges I had when we were doing Deathstroke was and Christopher, you could speak to this much more eloquently than me here.
Oh, right.
When you're doing a book where the villain is the lead, it becomes very challenging to actually have them stay a villain. And so inevitably, any sort of villain book kind of becomes or wants to become an anti-hero book.
Yeah.
One of the problems at the start of the New 52, there were a lot of problems, but one of the core problems with Deathstroke at that time was I felt like he had become a joke. And what I mean by that is he had been a character that writers used as a shorthand.
Yep.
And so every time, the end of an issue, it's character's turn for a voice off panel, you turn the page, it's like, oh my God, it's Deathstroke. And it's like, holy shit, things just got real because Deathstroke's here, right? Except writers were using him to up stakes, right, so that their heroes could beat him. And then he loses, right? Yeah. So I started my approach with the New 52 of like, he had basically like a talent agent who like got him assassination jobs. And, he was like, hey, like Barry. Yeah, exactly. But before Barry. And he was like, look, I can't really get you solo stuff anymore because people kind of don't take you seriously. Like, so you got to work with a team. And so I created like, I think it was called the Harmory, or there was another funny name we had for it. And it was like basically like Gen 13 knockoffs, like the most annoying teenage like assassin characters you can imagine. And the whole first job is like them having to work together. And by the end, you think, oh, Slade, the old dog, has learned some new tricks and he's going to work with these kids and it's going to be great. And then the agent says, what do you think, Slade? He goes, I think that something like, I don't do teams, or all they are is competition. And you turn the page and he murders them all. Oh, wow. And then it turns into like, I'm going to go get my reputation back. And so but the challenge was like, what kind of threats do you create for a character named Deathstroke who's supposed to be killing the people he goes after? So we ended up creating like this villain mantle called Legacy. And if I'm remembering this right, like one of the kids that gets killed, their parents are super rich. And so they basically put like an unlimited amount of money as a bounty out there. And this helmet keeps getting passed down from person to person. So this legacy villain is basically, he can kill him over and over because it's a different person each time that's coming after him, right? And then the book just kind of like ended up turning into like 80s action movie homages. But so actually now that I'm saying this all out loud, this would work as a Deadpool story. So, yeah, 100%. So
okay, can I follow up real quick?
Please do.
So yeah, Kyle, I completely agree, where people are just using Deathstroke as just kind of this punching bag and as this sort of go-to, how can I end my story? I know, Zack Snyder's Justice League, here's Deathstroke, that kind of thing. The temptation to make him an anti-hero, I pushed back really hard on that, and I kept having arguments with DC about that. And they go, well, he's an anti-hero. And I go, not in my book, he's not. Yeah. In my book, he's a villain. He's a complete villain. And my take on him was simple. I never really thought about him being an assassin or an anti-hero. When I was writing Deathstroke, I was writing the world's worst dad. Okay. Yeah. That was what my story was about. It was about, this is a guy who has this family. He loves and wants to be loved, but he's capable of doing neither. And my take on Deathstroke was, if you've ever seen House MD with Hugh Laurie, the TV show on Fox, so my Deathstroke was like House MD with a machine gun.
It's never lupus.
And in fact, in one of the story arcs, he dies. And then, the kids go on and do whatever, Deathstroke is dead. They had the funeral and blah, 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 but then they realize that he's not dead. That we suspect he's not dead. And they're looking for him and they can't find him. Where is he? He quit being Deathstroke. So what has he done with his life? And we can't find him, and then on the last page of an issue, whatever like that, we cut to like the Appalachia, the middle of nowhere somewhere. And we find Deathstroke like at a hospital where he's a nurse. He's a male nurse, and he's really good at it, being a male nurse, but he outs himself because of something that happens in the story. But he had given up being Deathstroke, and he had taken his career. He was living in some kind of fabulous mobile camper thing, and he spent the weekend reading these medical texts, and became a medical nurse, got his license, and, that kind of thing. It's like, I figure that's my claim to fame. I turned Deathstroke into a male nurse.
I love it. I haven't thought about this stuff in a very long time, but now I'm remembering. So there's so many fun, weird connections between Deathstroke and Deadpool. Certainly Deadpool, created by Rob Liefeld, right? So I did the first 8 issues of Deathstroke, and then they fired me so Rob could take over Deathstroke.
Well,
really?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah. Seriously?
Yeah. I'd absolutely get rid of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So it was like, oh, okay. But, and obviously there's a meta-ness to that too,
Oh, yeah. I mean, so let me talk to you guys a little bit about what you were just saying about the anti-hero, right? So there's this whole concept that one of the reasons why a show like The Sopranos works, right, is because the audience always wants to gravitate to whatever the show is presenting as the center of good.
Yes.
Right? And it doesn't matter what else you do, the audience is...
It's an instinct.
That's right, because that's where their emotional focus is. So when you're writing these characters, when you're drawing these characters, because obviously point of view is a big part of how you craft a panel, of how you craft a layout. How do you... what's the thing underneath the shtick that you find, whether it's Deathstroke or Deadpool? You know, whether if it's Deathstroke, he's a killing machine, or Deadpool, he's a killing machine, but he's kind of a happy one. They've got these hidden depths that cause the audience to say, okay, I can follow you through a story. What is it about those guys that you access, and how do you access that?
Well, in my case, you know, I have to keep reminding the audience that Deathstroke, you know, I'm not reminding the audience, I'm reminding DC that Deathstroke is not an anti-hero, that he's a villain. So every time we kind of get to this place where they get comfortable with him doing something heroic, like at some point he renounced evil. He had this near-death experience, Deathstroke, he survived it, and he says, you know, I have renounced evil, I will now be good, and he decides to put together his own version of Teen Titans, much like you did, you know.
Like near-death stroke.
Yeah, right. It's like, you know, I'm going to show you how it's done. I'm going to show the Titans how it's done. So he puts together his own group called Defiance, and he's looking around to have Defiance take on their first case as heroes. And he puts on a cape. Deathstroke puts on a cape, you know, and it's the whole deal. And they all got matching X-Men uniforms and the whole deal. And he can't quite find the right case to put the kids on. And then he finds something going on here. And I forgot what the specifics of the case was, but there was just one problem. This guy in the middle of this case was kind of a complication. So Deathstroke's like, you know, I have renounced evil. I've changed my ways, you know, that kind of thing. But then he realizes this guy's kind of a problem. So he sneaks out to go murder this guy so that his team can do good. Okay. So he goes out, he murders the guy. He comes back and goes, now I renounce evil. So every now and then, soon as DC, which is my proxy for the audience, because DC, they want all their heroes to hold hands and sing Kumbaya, you know, because they're just, you know, they're the goody two-shoes company. Marvel is the company where they just Wolverine, you know, but you know, DC, you know, so every time they got comfortable, I would do, like you had him murder his team. I would do something to just remind them, oh no, this guy, he's not a good guy, you schmucks, you know.
Well, that was the funny thing about the era I wrote in at DC for the New 52. It ended up like they were trying to turn it into like 90s Marvel in some ways. Like it was kind of like this forced
Rob Liefeld.
This like forced grim dark hair. And by the way, I should say I love Rob. Like I'm not like I just think it's entertaining to me to look back on the idea of
he's
like
not watching.
He's watching. No, just like, you know, he creates Deadpool, then comes on Deathstroke. I can't remember if he had done Deathstroke before that or not. He might have over the years, but yeah, there was like this period where it was like everything had to be like crazy edgy in the DC universe, and I don't know. I feel like Zack Snyder like read the wrong books or something, but that's just my opinion. Yeah.
So, look, these guys, it's funny. Every time you guys talk about a Deathstroke story, and now I forget who incepted this, but I can't stop imagining it as a Deadpool story, because what you just laid out felt like, yes, absolutely, that could be a
Deadpool story. Yes.
Now I renounce evil.
With just the slightest change in tone, a lot of what we do could tip over into that. You know, and the Arkham story, the Arkham story arc, you know, especially because it's full of crazy people in an asylum. That what happens is Deathstroke is captured and convicted, and instead of sending him to prison, they commit him to Arkham, which is like, you know, what are you doing? He said, you know, so he recruits all these people. He has fun inside the asylum there. And yeah, with just the slightest twist of the dial, that could easily be a Deadpool story.
I want to go back a little bit to, and George, you sort of brought it up. You were talking about drawing the violence, the guns and the blades and all of that stuff. Obviously, these are two characters, two books that want to live in the ultra-violent space. And yet, you know, they are not sold necessarily to that audience. They're not presented to that audience. Slade is in Teen Titans Go, for the love of God. Right? Hey kids, look, it's the Hitman.
Well, you're doing a rated R character in a PG
but they call
rated.
Slade.
Right, because that's somehow less scary. It is less scary, but he's still that guy. I mean, whether you're drawing it or you're writing it, and there's a line. There's an invisible line, and your editor is going to tell you where it is. How do you dance on that line with the ultra violence to really convey what these characters are about and the insanity of what they're doing, but not kind of go to a place where you're going to get all kinds of crazy notes and you have to redraw and rewrite.
Well, I mean, there is a list of technicalities of that, you can't show a dismemberment or you can't show blood splattering. And depending on the book you're doing, whether it's for general audiences or it's a special, just released for the comic shops, you have different ratings, for lack of a better term, that you can actually go through. So it depends where the book is being distributed, as opposed to what you can actually do, or the level of violence, I should say. Because you can do all the violence, but most of it just won't be shown.
Yeah, it all depends on your composition, though, and where you stick your camera. You can get away with a lot. One of my favorite scenes with this guy is I had U.S. agent, I forgot how he's falling from a plane or a helicopter or whatever, but he's falling toward this field. And, you keep seeing this herd of cows that's assembled in the field. And here's this 300-pound, muscle man, that's just falling from the sky. And you just know he's going to screw these cows up, and you block that out really perfectly. And it's like, oh my God, this is going to be disgusting. He's going to fall in his cows and splat, and the cows, look up and then you cut up and you see U.S. agent hurtling, toward the cows. And somebody's narrating the story. The farmer who owns the cows is narrating the story, then you cut away to the farmer. This is after the fact. And the farmer, is narrating the story, and and at the last minute, the cows, they just part like the Red Sea, and U.S. agent goes plowed into the ground, and then you cut back to the farmer, and she goes, "I said they's cows. They's not stupid cows." They look up and they see the guy coming, and they go, "I get." But that was that's a Deadpool bit. That's completely a Deadpool bit.
Now, have any of you guys ever had pages sent back or had script notes given as a pushback on content?
The only time I've actually ever been edited, and this is really funny, I was working with Paul Jenkins. We were doing something for Image. It was an authority, and we had the engineer. And he fashioned that on her off time. Now, the engineer was this sort of biokinetic character that could talk to a ship, so she could be almost like the Terminator, that fluid metal. And when she's that way, she can actually respond to the ship and they can fly and do all these amazing things. But on her off hours, she's just a regular human being like all of us. And Jenkins thought on her off hours, what are her kinks? What did she like to do? And she likes to go, apparently she loved to go to bars, these seedy bars, and pick up little Mexican men, apparently. That was her thing. She was very into...
Why be little?
The height...
Size matters.
Right, because in reality, she was the dominant. She was more the aggressor. So you wouldn't, not that anybody wouldn't want a 6'5" woman, but it's more that she could dominate the little guy.
Okay.
And she takes him back to his place. They have sex, of course. And what got edited was when in her completion, because she's basically liquid metal again, when she reaches her climax, she kind of explodes in a liquid metal-y sort of a way. And of course, this scares off the poor little Mexican guy, and he just runs out of the hotel room. So what was edited, we couldn't show the sploosh of it. And there's a far shot where I can't. There's an obvious sexual happening there, but we had to draw underwear on the guy.
Oh my God!
Because it came back that from the distance, all you saw, just like you would see on television, you kind of saw them from the side, and you know they're naked only because you don't see anything on the side of them.
Yeah.
We had to draw shorts on that. And Jenkins was incensed. He was so pissed off with that, which it seemed ridiculous. And I don't know anybody who actually read it would even care or think about that.
You're not wearing underwear.
But that was the most I've ever been edited, yes.
Well, I keep having this argument over Dynamite and a DC to go, look, I don't know what you guys are thinking, but children are not reading your comic books. Okay? I doubt that children are reading Vampirella.
And they're not paying, $7, $8.
Right.
Which this was a
prestige thing.
Prestige-bound book,
Yeah. And by the way, George, you got pushed back. You just weren't, it wasn't pushed back on you, it was pushed back on me. But nary an issue of U.S. Agent made it through without having to be rewritten extensively, because they just kept wanting me to tone down U.S. Agent and make them less of a, this is who the character is. And I really wish that Disney, because that's who it was, Disney minus, that I wish that they had just told us up front, by the way, we're putting them in the Falcon and the Snowman, or the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. There you go. We're putting them in the streaming series, and this is what we're going back to what we were talking about earlier about protecting the character. They were being very protective of the character because of the IP, because he was about to make his debut in this family-friendly, allegedly family-friendly streaming show. And I wish they had said, okay, here's the shot up front, because had I known that, I would have written him completely differently. But I wrote him to be not really bigoted, but uninformed is the word I want to use. U.S. Agent.
Archie Bunker of his time, for sure.
Yeah. So he meets this guy, and he starts calling him a Chinaman or whatever. And the thing about All the Family or Archie Bunker is that the rule is, the guy can be bigoted, and you could take him right to the extreme as long as there's a character there that pushes back. As long as you have a meathead that pushes back on him. So he's calling the guy a Chinaman, and the guy goes, well, first of all, I'm Japanese, you idiot, and second of all, blah, blah, blah. And then this little Japanese guy, throws U.S. Agent down the stairs, which actually kind of earns U.S. Agent's respect, in a way. But, it was that kind of dynamic. And it was that kind of dynamic. But the lawyers, they were like, oh, no. They have to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. And that book was just pure hell, George. Oh, my God.
So as editors, Kyle, you kind of edit your own line at Image, and I'm sure that's very different from Marvel and DC. Christopher, you've obviously been editor forever.
That's his way of calling me old.
Yeah, because I've been reading it forever.
There you go.
Is it different as an editor when you look at the material? Does it hit differently? Do you feel it differently? Would you give other people notes that you would not want to get, or do you understand?
No, I was much worse. Okay, when I was an editor, this is like when Nixon was in office. Okay, so it was a long time. No, it wasn't Nixon. Come on, they're all going, Nixon, really? When I was an editor, there was no internet. Okay, there was no internet. We didn't even have voicemail.
Hands and
we had a letters page.
We had no computers. There were no PCs on desk because they were very expensive and so forth. So this is like in the early days. So if you wanted to write a letter to the editor, you had to actually lick a stamp and go walk to the mailbox and so forth. So the writers would send their scripts in through FedEx, or the artists would send the actual boards in, so there was a lot of shipping going back and forth. So if I, as an editor, I would know what the rules were. And I would have told, editor Priest would have told writer Priest, okay, look, because of the TV show, you can't write the character that way. And I would have known, I would have told my but either they didn't tell Tom, because Brevoort, he's a high muckamuck at Marvel. He's no slouch. So either Tom didn't realize that we were going to get all this pushback, or there was some communications fault there. However, when I was an editor, because of the time constraints, because we had to make deadline, because we had to make shipping, and the turnaround, there was no time for me to wait for somebody to rewrite a script and send it in. I would often, and other editors, I would probably call you, Kyle, but I'd say, look, can you either dictate this to me, fax it to me or whatever, but if I couldn't reach you, if we couldn't do it, I would sit down and write it myself. So I did a lot of rewriting as the editor, which, writers are never happy about being rewritten. But back in those days, it was kind of de rigueur because there just was no time. There was no, you couldn't just email it to me, and we had something called telex. Do anybody know what telex is? That's even like before faxing. We had telex, which was even weirder than faxing and so forth.
Yeah, I'm having so many like PTSD flashbacks. I mentioned I wrote in the New 52, right? Yeah. I mean,
Dan DiDio,
there was often,
master of the universe.
There were often times where I would like get sent a PDF of an issue of Nightwing. I'd be like, well, let's see what I wrote this month. and there were things, it was never like major stuff, but I remember having a conversation with the assistant editor one time, and I was like, and they were like, wait, hold on, let me just so I understand. You're upset because I changed this and this and added this caption and changed commas and things. And I was like, yes, that's if you want, just call me. Like, you think I don't obsess over it? We're writers. Like everything it's by design, it's by choice. Like
there's a meter, there's a tone.
You've killed the cadence.
Right.
Of this,
Yeah.
But your question, Ash, about the difference between writing and editing, there's a very famous kind of saying about, if someone tells you there's a problem with your story, they're right. If they tell you how to fix it, they're wrong. That's kind of like the simplest version of it. It's really interesting because I wrote for many, many years before I then have started editing and creative directing on our own titles. And a lot of times I'm working with writers who are newer to comics or even seasoned writers. And I'm finding, I have to check myself a lot. There was a process early on. I've been doing it now for about 3 or 4 years on our line. And it was like I'd have to constantly check with myself. And it's like, wait, am I reacting to this because it's not the way I would do it as a writer? Or am I reacting to this because there is something here that like intrinsically okay, what are my tenets as far as what I think storytelling is? And it actually sharpened me quite a bit and made me, because it forces you to become hopefully more articulate in what you believe makes for a good story or a good comic script or a good whatever. I mean, Ash, you're a showrunner, like you work with other writers all the time, but you started as a feature writer and had a writing partner for years, but also solo. I got to imagine you've kind of gone through the same process once you are leading a team of other writers. Like it is a different experience. And Chris, I imagine like as an editor, like every writer you've worked with, to some extent, you have to figure out how to communicate differently with each one. Sure. Like I'm a film director as well, and it's kind of the same thing working with actors. You kind of figure out how each person likes to work, and then you cater how you're giving notes or direction. Hopefully you figure out how to cater it to put them in the best position to succeed or reach that potential in the script that you think the script warrants. But it is different, and I think as soon as you get into territory, and sometimes it is a situation like Chris is talking about, where it's like there's no time. I know how to do this. I need to do the lift, and I either have to apologize later, or we have to find a way to do this. And every once in a while, still there are things where it's like I'll be giving a note on something, and I'll have to explain to the writer, like, look, I can't quite articulate why this won't work, but I'm telling you it won't work because I've done it and made the mistake and it didn't work. And so there is just there's something inherent that you, as a writer, you're working off of instinct a lot of times as well. And that's something that you can't really teach, but you can learn, but learn the hard way.
But having been an editor, but having been a writer, having been on that other side of the desk, we become more sensitive to what writers are going through. It annoys me when an editor doesn't put my vouchers in. Okay, they either forgot to, or for whatever crazy reason, they just didn't do it. Rule number one is when the work shows up, the work shows up, you log it in, you voucher it, that kind of thing. And today, I probably would not touch your writing unless I couldn't find you. Yeah. Unless there was, dude, this book's got to go, or whatever the story is.
One of the things that changed at Marvel and DC really, I would say late 90s or probably early 2000s, is that editors used to write books as well.
Yeah.
And that went away at a certain point. And I'm not really sure why.
Yeah.
But I do think
Yeah.
I do think there is something to the fact that if you want to be a good editor, I think every editor, especially nowadays, like, I wish more of them did write or tried writing or had the opportunities to go and write a script, because there is something being on that side of it. I've gotten notes from people before that aren't writers, and you can tell.
Yeah.
It's not to say that the notes are bad.
Wow.
They are, but usually they're bad. And it's also like, I find it's hard to respect notes when they're coming from people who fundamentally don't understand story.
The craft. Well, in my day, Jim Shooter, who was the editor-in-chief in that time, he would kind of insist that all of his editors are doing some form of craft, writing, lettering, inking, coloring, whatever, because he wanted us to understand, what it's like to be the freelancer trying to make the deadline and to hone our craft. But in those days, Marvel was staffed by craftsmen. So to give you an example, the office to my left, that was Al Milgram, who was an artist and an inker. His assistant was Mary Jo Duffy, who did like maybe the best run on Power Man Iron Fist ever. Okay, to my right was Carl Potts, who was a triple threat writer, artist, editor, the whole deal like that. Then there was Michael Golden, who was in the office next door. Denny O'Neil was in the office across the hall. Okay, all right. Down the hall, Marv Wolfman shared an office with Len Wein. Okay, Dave Cockrum would when he came into the office, he would be back there. Ramita Senior was the art director. Ramita Jr. was a teenager. He was we were teenagers together. He was the operator of the key operator of the Xerox machine. That's how I met John Ramita Jr. But I'm saying that there were times when we would get into a deadline crunch, particularly because of Secret Wars. Thank you, Jim. Secret Wars, where Jim would kind of lock the doors and we could not go home. He would order up like 1 million pizzas, and it was all hands on deck. And Larry Hama was my boss, so Larry could write and draw and edit. He'd put all the, and you take 5 pages and you take 5 pages, and Joe Rubenstein comes in with a horde of assistants, and we're all there and the music's blasting, and we're literally there all weekend, locked in with the pizza and with Shooter, locked in like a steel cage match with Jim Shooter, who is orchestrating. He's like the conductor of the orchestra. And so on Thursday we had nothing. On Friday we had a finished book. We can't do that anymore. Yeah. Not a chance. Not a chance.
I would love to ask you who would win in a cage match, Jim Shooter or Deadpool and Deathstroke.
Jim is taller.
Yeah, he's a very tall man. I don't think he'd be destroyed by conventional weapons, but
he doesn't have the knees for it anymore.
No, that's true. He's a little bit slow. You definitely would have an advantage there. But
but he's the sharpest guy that I knew in this business, and I just want to be on record about how much affection I have for him, and it really bugs me when people come to me and they start complaining about Jim, whatever. The fact is, Jim Shooter wanted to make comics. He wanted to make better comics and make them come out on time.
And he did.
And those are two diametrically opposed. You can make them better, but they're going to come out slower. You can make them come out on time, but in order to do that, you're going to have to just rush it through to get, and he wanted to accomplish both things. And Marvel was a fairly undisciplined place because Stan was on the West Coast. Roy had departed. He wasn't running the thing anymore. Nobody lasted long in the center seat. Nobody really wanted to last long in the center seat. So when Jim came in, he brought order to chaos, and people tended to resent him for that. But when I came into the business, Jim was in place and he was all I knew. So these people knew a life before Jim. I was trained by Jim, so all I knew was Jim. And this felt perfectly normal to me. And everybody was like, oh, that Shooter. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. It seems all right to me, but yeah, that was kind of what was going on there. But in those days, you had craftsmen all over the place who could teach and who could actually do it if we got behind on stuff, and we would everybody just all hands on deck and we'd knock it out. And those days are long gone now.
So I hate to do it. GalaxyCon is about to gong us off the stage. But if you get, thank you. If you get that reference, you're my age. But it's got to happen. But I want to thank all of you guys for being up here, and also to remind all of you, one of the reasons why we do these panels, other than the fact we know that you love these characters and these creators, is to remind you that they are here. And they are at tables down on the floor. They are signing. They are talking to you. And we really want to encourage you to go down there and go up and meet them and say hi, why they're here. So thank you all very much for coming. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Earning your degree online doesn't mean you have to go about it alone. At Capella University, we're here to support you when you're ready. From enrollment counselors who get to know you and your goals, to academic coaches who can help you form a plan to stay on track. We care about your success and are dedicated to helping you pursue your goals. Going back to school is a big step, but having support at every step of your academic journey can make a big difference. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. With over 122 million parts, you can make sure your number one ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be.
So, what do you guys think? Billion dollar franchise, more than $1 billion franchise, $1 billion movie and counting and counting. What was your thoughts about
claws out?
It's got its adamantium claws into the box office. Ashley, as somebody who wrote X-Men First Class and Thor and has been a big part of the Marvel universe, what were your feelings about the film?
Oh my God, man. I have to say, I really loved it. It's funny. I went to see it with Caden the night before that we're recording this. And I'll tell you what really hit me. And I think the list of people that it would hit is very small, but it hit me. There is, and this is not a spoiler because so what? There is a montage at the end of behind the scenes clips.
Oh,
from
I know.
all of the Fox films. And it actually got me kind of teary. It was just a thing where I suddenly remembered, how proud I was of all the hard work we put into that, all the people we know who put so much hard work into it. Just a hugely important piece of my life, and I love the fact that this movie celebrated that and didn't run away from it and embraced it and made the best of it. And I really thought that film did a great job of somehow managing to weave together so many conflicting tones. And it could be just insanely wrong, and then slapstick funny, and then incredibly moving by turns and still work and hold together.
Yeah, I found that very moving, that video tribute. It was like, that because it was kind of really the coda on the Bryan Singer X-Men universe.
Yep.
And I thought that it was really nice and very sweet and unexpected, which was great. And I have to say about the movie, I like the first Deadpool. I like the second Deadpool. I like the PG Once Upon a Deadpool. I've seen them all. And I wasn't sure if I was going to like this because I'm so over multiverses at this point, and I want to see Marvel tell an original story with new characters and new actors and not just coast off past success. And but but I thought it was terrific. I thought it had a lot of fun playing around with the Fox universe, the Fox MCU, and obviously Ryan Reynolds is delightful. And I got a little teary when I saw the 20th Century Fox tower in shambles because of course because that studio means so much to all of us, and
it's true.
Yeah, well, and it wasn't so much to me about the Marvel MCU, which the Marvel Fox MCU, but more just Fox in general, which is just such an amazingly is a studio that has always meant so much to me. Yeah. And the fact that it's now become a label in the Disney empire, which is better than nothing. It's better than what happened to United Artists, although now they're talking about United Artists coming back. But that was it. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot, actually. I thought it was a ton of fun, and but it's a diversion. Right? It's not. Is.
But you know what? There's what you said about multiverses. I just want to hit something there. So there's a lot of talk about that and about superhero fatigue and all these things. And I think what we've really been looking at is crappy movie fatigue because, Deadpool and Wolverine is great. Here's the other thing about it. Yeah, it's got a multiverse story, which on some level we should all be completely exhausted with. But here's why it works. The reason it works is that there are real stakes in the film, and it expertly presents those stakes. The stakes for Deadpool are, I've got a Polaroid of the people in my life that mean something to me, and if all of this goes away, then they go away and I lose everything. And that was the North Star for this film. And
I thought that was Back to the Future.
Oh yeah, well, it's except they didn't all fade away, right? Oh, and it was kind of the same thing for Logan, for Wolverine, right? That he had lost everything, and kind of how does he get that back? And my hat's off to everyone who was involved in that film for really keeping it focused on those emotional stakes and making the multiverse concept work for the drama rather than be like, oh, isn't this great?
Just a crush.
I totally agree, because look, it's not like The Flash, where The Flash just used multiverse to try and create emotions that the movie couldn't conjure on its own, right? There's Christopher Reeve, right? All that good. The Marvel has done the multiverse extremely well with Spider-Man and with this and stuff. So I'm not it's more that I'm ready to see new stories and new adventures rather than coast on, sort of the goodwill that I have towards so many of these characters. But, also giving a second chance to people like Jennifer Garner and Elektra and all these other cameos.
That was a great cameo.
Wonderful. I mean, it's brilliantly, executed. And it's all these different genres. There's a little George Miller in there, and there's superhero stuff, and there's screwball comedy and romance. I mean, it really is. It threads the needle so expertly, that it would really be quibbling to say, oh, there's something about it that I didn't really enjoy. And also I think for all of us right now, when Roy Thomas is trying to take credit away from Len Wein for creating Wolverine, and Len is somebody we all knew, and some more than others. It's very it's very upsetting.
Yeah, and you know what? First of all, it's I don't know whether this should be something we should credit Marvel with or not. I feel like we should. There is, in fact, in the closing credits, there is a special thank you to Len for all of his contributions to the Marvel universe, and I think that was entirely appropriate. It's too bad that his wife isn't enjoying the benefits of what he created. It's too bad that somebody like Roy Thomas, who is talented in his own right and accomplished a lot of things in his own right, has suddenly made this about him and then doubled down on it. We talked about that on the Wolverine panel because it was impossible to ignore. It had basically just popped up. And I hope that we had all that stuff. But I think that, it's great that we're now kind of living in an era where we can be so aware of the fact that these characters who mean so much to us have creators. They have people who really put the thought, their hearts, their souls into creating these characters, that it can be a controversy right? That we can understand it to that degree and that we know how to thank them. I ran into Len's wife. She was at at one of the panels I did at Comic-Con. She was at the silly Hollyweird, which is silly in a great way, Hollyweird panel that I did with Kevin Grazier. And I talked to her for a little bit, and it's sad. But I'm glad that Marvel acknowledged what Len had done.
Now, I don't want to have this conversation now, but I do want to say somebody said something to me recently that I thought was brilliant. Now, it's the analogy is not completely sound, but I'm going to throw it out there. We're going to save this for a future discussion. They said, yeah, it's really interesting because if you look at it, Gene Coon was Jack Kirby to Gene Roddenberry's Stan Lee.
Yes.
And I've never heard it put that way before.
That's brilliant.
And I'm like, wow, that's brilliant. Yeah. So that may be a conversation.
Yeah, not exactly, but
not exactly.
Yeah.
Right. But it's not a crazy analogy.
Right.
No, because you simply, this is a whole other conversation, as you said, but you simply can't ignore what Gene Coon did for Star Trek.
Right.
But yeah, it's like that. I love that people are now conscious of these things and that it makes a difference to them.
And
that's why this discussion is so interesting.
And Kirby was Bill Finger to Stan Lee's Bob Kane. That's absolutely true.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is a whole fascinating conversation, which we're not going to have.
I can talk about comic books. I'm not dumb like everybody says.
Yeah, it's a real good thing.
John Cazale would have been 89 years old today.
Yeah, I know. I saw that.
It's hard to believe. That's crazy.
He was brilliant.
He was absolutely brilliant. But I really enjoyed Deadpool and Wolverine. And Hugh Jackman can do no wrong. My God, is he good in this movie? And tonally, the fact that this movie it works in the Logan verse.
Yeah.
It works alongside Logan is incredible.
That's
that they pull that off. Really great.
Especially I don't know that I will ever watch Logan in the same way again, knowing what becomes of his corpse. Spoiler alert, but that was pretty glorious. There are 270 bones in the human body.
Unfortunately, I have bad news for Kevin Feige. Bad news.
Uh-oh. Oh, no.
Yeah. Deadpool versus Wolverine is better than Star Trek 3.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Although I did like the scene where Deadpool and Wolverine steal the Enterprise. That was pretty great.
They steal a Kia.
Yeah, they do actually.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, sorry, but it's true. It's a better made film.
I'd like to hear him argue that.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear him argue.
Come on, fight us. Let's go.
Don't wait for the translation. Answer me now. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Anything you want to add, Darren?
No, I'm just glad the whole thing happened.
There you go. Okay. Well, look, thanks for sharing that conversation with us, Ashley. It's another great GalaxyCon panel that we're able to share with you. Thanks to the largesse of the great Mike Broder and his whole team at GalaxyCon. If you want to experience these live, go to galaxycon.com where you can meet the Treksperts and come to many of our fantastic panels. And we
kind of
hope
like
to
the
see
Flintstones.
That's right.
Meet the Flintstones.
Meet the Treksperts. Dun, 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 dun. Darren, you got to record that.
Nope.
They're a modern Star Trek family.
Can't you do it to Shatner? Meet the Treksperts. A modern. Come on. Okay, well, I think it's time we get out of Deck 78. Clearly, we've had too much to drink, and we got to get back to the bridge. So, thanks for joining us. And remember now, as a Treksperts Plus subscriber, you can get commercial-free episodes of Deck 78. But episodes of Deck 78 with commercials will be dropping a few weeks after. And if you're not a Treksperts subscriber, that's just not as good. It's just not as good. So you really want to subscribe. Not as good.
It's bad.
You don't know what other stuff we're going to get.
No, don't say it's bad. It's just not as good.
It's just not as good.
It's not as good.
It's not bad. It's great, but it's not as good.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But by the time this comes to people who aren't subscribers, it's already going to be on DVD, and who cares at that point? Yeah. So,
maybe
digital.
VHS. Who knows?
Oh, my goodness.
Right. Oh, I got a VHS story, but I'm not going to tell you now. I'll tell you on the next podcast.
All right.
Because it's pretty funny. Okay, so subscribe to Treksperts Plus. You can listen to new episodes of Treksperts, the Inglorious Treksperts, every Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts. We're almost at the end of our 6th season. Starting in September, we'll be starting our 7th season.
Wow.
Some would say our 7th and final season. Perhaps. I don't know. Star Trek tends to end after 7 seasons. I don't know. Can we go to 8? Does this one go to 11?
You've teased this before and you wimped out.
I didn't say I was leaving.
We were all ready to audition people and everything. And then
I didn't say I was leaving. I'm saying
us.
You're saying that one of us is leaving.
No, I'm saying there's a conversation to be had. You never want to stay at the party too late. That, maybe 7 seasons.
Well, we are the party.
Length.
That's right.
Maybe 7.
And we will cry if we want to.
Maybe 7 seasons is enough. Or is 8 enough?
8 is enough.
Oh, could be. 8 is enough to fill our hearts with Trek.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, join us on Deck 78 on the Inglorious Treksperts feed. You can subscribe at Treksperts Plus, Spotify, or go to the 430 Movie and subscribe to the 430 Movie if you'd rather listen on Apple Podcasts. And of course, you can enjoy Inglorious Treksperts goodness on video, on Spotify, and now at YouTube. So check it out. So until we return to the appointed place again. Until we return to the appointed place again. Fire the rockets. Fire the rockets. Yeah.
Fire the rockets.
Deck 78 is an exclusive podcast from Treksperts Plus.